Tyson Fury remains the undefeated heavyweight champion of the world after beating Dillian Whyte by knockout yesterday, because how can you beat a man who has beaten his own demons? Because Tyson Fury has actually been quite vocal about his struggle with mental health and depression and thoughts of ending his own life previously. So in this video, I'm going to go through some of the things that we can learn from Tyson Fury's battle and his really quite remarkable inspirational journey from getting to such a low dark point to heavyweight champion of the world. If you don't know who I am, my name is Seramed and I'm a doctor working in London. I make videos about celebrity health. If that's something you are interested in, then hit subscribe so you can stay informed. So Tyson Fury was born in Wythenshawe in Manchester North. He comes from a background of 200 years of boxing in the gypsy community. And his father actually tried to dissuade him away from boxing. And it wasn't really until Tyson Fury was a teenager that his father actually realized how talented he was, and Tyson just wanted to be a boxer. So he basically just carried on with that path, and he used to see Klitschko fighting on TV, and he made this huge goal that one day he would be the heavyweight champion of the world and beat Vladimir Klitschko in a fight for the title. So during that time, he actually did suffer from depression, but he didn't know that's what it was at the time because he'd not been educated on mental health, which is another reason why I think these videos are so important, because how can you seek help for something if you don't know that there's something wrong?
I'd suffered with mental health problems my whole life, but I didn't know what it was because I never had no education on the matter.
You have these destructive thought processes, but you might think it's normal, and everyone goes through that, and you just struggle on with your day, even though help could be available. And that's really quite interesting because Tyson Fury mentions that after he got help, he really wondered why he didn't go and get help earlier, and we'll talk about that more a little bit later. So interestingly, when Tyson Fury actually came up to the point where he could be achieving his goal, he became a professional boxer and he was about to go fight Vladimir Klitschko, his trainer asked him, "What will you do after you have this fight?" And Tyson Fury replied, "I'm going to go into a deep depression," because Tyson Fury knew that as soon as he beat Klitschko, he would be empty. He'd have nothing else to do or any goal to strive towards. Listen to Fury talk about that moment.
I was quite afraid of winning because I knew that I wouldn't have a goal anymore, and I knew that I'd come crashing down.
So this is what we call an arrival fallacy. So when you get close to achieving a goal which was previously insurmountable, you start to experience as if you've already achieved it. And so when it comes to actually getting that goal, that moment where it happens, you don't feel as happy as you expected you would when that goal comes along. Just like a similar thing happens with mothers when their babies are born, and afterwards they do sometimes go into baby blues, depression, or even psychosis as a result of just feeling underwhelmed by the whole situation, because they were looking forward to motherhood for so long and it didn't quite match up to their expectations. So it's really important to know that if you feel like that, you are not the only one out there, and support is available. Now, Tyson Fury didn't seek help. He resorted to drugs and alcohol and started partying. So take a look at it in his words.
I used to drink and take drugs to get away from the depression, because when I was drunk or high, then I wouldn't think about being depressed. I thought about being I'm a boxing champion, or I feel great.
He even then went on to be drug tested and tested positive for cocaine by the boxing committee, And so going back into boxing became such a distant possibility, and that added to his depression. Now, it's so common for this to happen, and it's a form of escapism. You don't deal with the problem there and then because it's too painful. Instead, it's deferred, but the more you push it away, the bigger the problem gets until you reach crisis point. And that's what happened to Tyson Fury, because he had thoughts of ending his own life. So listen to this clip. And I warn you, it can be disturbing for some.
I got the car up to 190 miles an hour. I was heading towards that bridge. And I didn't care what no one was thinking. I didn't care about hurting my family, me career, people who friends, anybody. I didn't care. I didn't care about nothing. I just wanted to die so bad. I give up on life. And just as I was heading towards that bridge at 190 in this Ferrari, it had crushed like a Coke can, by the way, if I'd have hit it. I heard a voice say, "No, don't do this, Tyson." I thought that day, I'll never, ever, ever try or think about taking my own life ever again.
That's really interesting, because that crisis point was also the turning point for Tyson Fury, and the fact that he didn't go ahead with it and he is still here with us today is just an example of how inspirational that man is, because at that point he was really at rock bottom. He was 400 pounds, he had no hope, his licenses were taken away, but he sought help, and that turned his life around. He actually at that point saw a video by Deontay Wilder saying at how washed up Fury was, and that Wilder would have knocked him out even in his prime, and so he would knock out Mike Tyson as well. And so that spurred Fury on to get back in the ring, get training again, and just be able to get his life back on track, stop with the drugs and the alcohol.
He'd done this video, after seeing this evidence of Tyson Fury, I finally know he's finished. He can never come back, and even if I would have fought him in his heyday, I'd have knocked him out. Before that, he was talking about Mike Tyson, how he'd knocked Mike Tyson out in a round. And I thought to myself, that's very disrespectful to talk about someone who's not even from your era. I thought to myself, you know what, if I ever do fight you, I'm going to give it you for that reason. He'd give me that much more motivation to return, just so I can beat Deontay Wilder.
Now, there were a few things that stopped Fury from seeking assistance at the start. When he talks about it, he mentions that he thought the doctor was going to tell all of his mates and say that he's a weak person. So take a look.
At that time, I didn't think it was going to be for me, because I thought, this guy is going to go and tell all his mates that I'm a weak person, it's going to be in the press, blah, 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 and it's not going to be good for me. But when I went there, and I finally realised that in order to get well again, I must admit to myself that I'm ill and I need help. And I wish to God I'd done it years before.
Yeah. Now, it's critical to note that that's such a common reason why people don't come to the doctors. But all doctors are sworn to an oath of confidentiality, and that means that they have to maintain what the patient tells them in confidence. If a patient of mine tells me something, I am bound by law and duty to keep it private unless they are a risk to the people around them and themselves, and I need to inform a third-party authority to help the population. That means the duty to the population can sometimes outweigh the duty of confidentiality, but that is really in exceptional circumstances. One of the other things that Fury mentioned is that when he was seeking help from those around him, especially because they weren't educated on mental health, they really didn't receive it as well as he would want them to. Take a look.
When you're around people who have no education on the matter and don't understand mental health, and they think you're just an attention seeker, or you're looking for some type of pity or whatever.
Now, what he's mentioning there is mental health stigma. The idea that someone who's going through depression or mental health difficulties is just making it up. They just need to toughen up, or they are looking for attention, that kind of thing. Well, in actual fact, 1 in 4 people will struggle with depression throughout their lifetime. Such a common illness to go through. And I think until you have gone through it yourself, then you would not be able to truly empathize with how someone would feel when they have depression. And I think it's important that if you know anyone who does suffer from depression, that you try and support them as best as they can without blaming them. Just as we wouldn't blame them for any other physical condition, then we shouldn't blame people for having a mental health condition, and instead we should be supportive. And that's why videos like this are just so important to get across, because mental health education is really lacking in the Western world, and we need to up our game in that. So Tyson Fury, he manages to turn things around. He gets his boxing license back after being tested again, and he gets the psychiatrist to sign him off for his fight. And so he goes back in, fights Deontay Wilder 3 times, and then we know how it all ends. Take a look.
Wilder, how on earth is Deontay Wilder staying upright? It could be all over now. It will be now. That surely is going to be the end of the fight.
Now, one thing he doesn't mention is about how he recovered. And it's important to note that when you go and see a doctor, they'll treat you based on how severe the condition is. So they may ask you to do some questionnaires. So in the UK, we use something called PHQ-9 and GAD-7. So scales of depression and anxiety, usually when someone comes in with a mental health presenting complaint. We're not doing it because we're lazy. We're doing it because it's really difficult to classify someone just based on their presenting features. So to have something that's more systematic based on a number scale, like a questionnaire, will help us more accurately define how severe someone's depression is and how to treat them thereafter. So speaking of treatment, there are 2 main options. You've got psychotherapy and you have medication. So psychotherapy helps people to really cut off any kind of destructive thought patterns that they might have that may lead them into a darker place, because there is a theory in psychology that the human mind is naturally inclined to be towards negative thoughts and pessimism sometimes, and so breaking those cycles are a really important skill to stop yourself from falling into depression. And the other thing is medication. So they are basically drugs that help the happy hormones in the blood move up, but you would always want to seek advice from a clinician before using them, because they can have some side effects, and they usually take between 6 weeks and 3 months to have an effect. And if they haven't by that point, then moving on to a different medication is a good idea. Some people just need that medication temporarily as a boost, but some people will stay on it long term, and that's totally okay. You can do that. Now, I hope that you found that video useful. I think it's just incredible that Tyson Fury managed to switch his life around, lose so much weight, and come back and beat Deontay Wilder for the heavyweight title after he said that he was washed up. And he really is an inspiration for all people out there who are just in a low place and looking to be able to switch their life around. If he can do it, there is absolutely no reason why anyone else can't. And if you have enjoyed this video, please give me this thumbs up, and I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you have enjoyed this, you may enjoy the video on Elon Musk's Asperger's syndrome, which will be somewhere here. And stay healthy, stay happy. I will see you in the next video. Take care.